आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारत की संतान है हम, जगत गुरु का नाम है हम, आर्यभट्ट और सुश्रुत जैसे ऋषियों का अभिमान है हम, तक्षशिला और नालंदा सा गौरव जिसका, ऐसे भारत की यारों पहचान है हम। विश्व पटल पर फहरेगा तिरंगा प्यारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेक इन इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया का हो सपना पूरा, डिजिटल और स्टार्टअप इंडिया अब ना रहे अधूरा। मुद्रा एमी सेमी उद्यमी अपने सूर्य शिखर हैं, हिंदुस्तानी व्यापारी होगा अब जग का सूरा। बिजनेस के आकाश में चमचमकेगा भारत तारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेहनत कस खेती कर किसान भरता है अन्न भंडारे, लाल देश का फौजी बन तन खड़ा है सरहद द्वारे। रोटी देता एक लाल है लाज बचैया दूजा, नमन हिंद की सेना करते भारतवंशी सारे। एक अखंड भारत का तुम ही सत्य सहारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारतवंशी आन से बान से ध्यान से, धर्म आत्मनिर्भरता का निभाएंगे जी जान से। त्याग विदेशी अपनाएंगे पूर्ण स्वदेशी, गांव से ग्लोब स्वदेशी हो सर्व सम्मान से। एक राष्ट्र हो श्रेष्ठ राष्ट्र गूंजे चहुनारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा।
इसका मार्ग एक ही है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत।
नमस्कार, मैं कनिष्का अग्रवाल आईडी यानी इंस्टीट्यूट फॉर इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट द्वारा आयोजित आज के इस वेबिनार में आप सभी का स्वागत करती हूं। आईआईडी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एमएसएमई के तहत भारत का पहला वर्चुअल इंक्यूबेटर है जो हर हफ्ते किसी न किसी बिजनेस पर वेबिनार आयोजित करता है, जिससे आपको इस बिजनेस की डीप नॉलेज मिल सके और आप भी अपना बिजनेस शुरू करके एक सफल उद्यमी बन सके। इसी कड़ी में आईआईडी आज फिर आपके लिए लेकर आया है एक और वेबिनार, और वो है वेबिनार ऑन अंडरस्टैंडिंग स्टार्टअप वैल्यूएशन फॉर फाउंडर्स। वेबिनार शुरू करने से पहले मैं स्वागत करना चाहूंगी आज के हमारे एक्सपर्ट श्री प्रतीक मित्तल जी का, जो आज के वेबिनार में एक्सपर्ट के तौर पर हमारे साथ यहाँ मौजूद हैं। श्री प्रतीक मित्तल जी ने बिजनेस फील्ड में अपनी डेडिकेशन और बिजनेस एक्सपर्टीज के साथ एक खास पहचान बनाई है। एक्सीलेंट मैनेजमेंट स्किल्स और लीडरशिप स्किल्स के लिए प्रसिद्ध प्रतीक मित्तल जी व्यवसायिक जगत में जाना माना नाम है। सर, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका। साथ ही मैं स्वागत करना चाहूंगी इस वेबिनार में मौजूद सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स का। प्रतीक जी चार्टेड अकाउंटेंट है और साथ ही साथ 19 साल से अधिक का अनुभव रखते हैं। अब मैं चाहूंगी इनके बारे में अन्य जानकारी हमारी टेक टीम इनकी प्रोफाइल के द्वारा दे। टेक टीम, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि आप प्रतीक जी की प्रोफाइल प्ले करें।
वैल्यूएशंस, कॉर्पोरेट फाइनेंस और इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग के क्षेत्र में 17 वर्षों से अधिक अनुभव रखने वाले प्रतीक मित्तल जी एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हैं। ये IBBI के साथ पंजीकृत एक इंसॉल्वेंसी प्रोफेशनल और सिक्योरिटीज और फाइनेंशियल एसेट्स के लिए रजिस्टर्ड वैल्यूअर भी हैं। अपने कार्य क्षेत्र में इन्होंने क्रेडिट स्विस एंड बियर स्टर्न्स जैसे वैश्विक निवेश बैंकों के साथ काम करने का व्यापक अनुभव प्राप्त किया है। प्रतीक जी ने स्टार्टअप्स और SME क्लाइंट्स को फाइनेंशियल कंसल्टेंसी प्रदान कर अपना विशेष योगदान दिया है। इसके साथ ही इन्होंने UN वुमन, UNDP और फोर्टम ग्रुप जैसे कई अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों को सलाह और परामर्श भी दिए हैं। तो ये है हमारे आज के गेस्ट, जिनका एक्सपर्ट के तौर पर समाधान ग्रुप स्वागत करता है। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सो मच टीम। अब मैं आज के हमारे एक्सपर्ट श्री प्रतीक जी से रिक्वेस्ट करती हूँ कि यहाँ जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स मौजूद हैं उन्हें आज के विषय के बारे में विस्तार पूर्वक बताएं। सर, ओवर टू यू।
Hello, morning everyone. Thank you Kanishka for the introduction and the team also for the great video. Morning everyone. I think let's directly start with the presentation first, and then we can take some Q&As. Is my screen visible?
Yes sir.
Okay, it's visible in full screen, right?
Yes sir.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so good morning. Today's topic is valuation of startup. So what do you understand by valuation? So what do you understand by valuation? What is startup valuation? Valuation is like is the process of determining the economic value of a startup company or any other company. It is basically an economic concept which gives you a range of values. It is assessing the worth of a business on in monetary terms based on various factors.
हेलो प्रतीक सर वीडियो ऑन कर लीजिएगा अपना।
Sorry?
सर वीडियो ऑन कर लीजिएगा आपका वीडियो।
Okay. Just a minute. Video option. Okay. Sorry. Is it fine now? इसको मैं मिनिमाइज कर देता हूँ। Okay. So startup valuation is the process of determining the economic value of a company. It is assessing the worth of a business in monetary terms based on various factors and methodologies. It is very critical to any entrepreneur because it impacts the decision of investors, founders, and other stakeholders. There are several methods and approaches for this determining this valuation. We'll be discussing them in detail in this presentation. Some of them are discounted cash flow method, comparable company analysis, precedent transactions, venture capital method. each method has its own strengths and limitations, and the choice depends on various factors like stage of the company, industry, availability of data, etc. Okay, so this is a very interesting slide. So many people would confuse value with price, but price is different and from value. Price is basically what you pay, but value is what you get. And if we look at from the buyer's perspective, they would always want to have a smartest catch at a low price where they can extract more value from the business, and hence the reward matches or is more than the risk that they are taking. But from the seller's perspective, they would want to have the higher price, which may be more than the value that can be derived from the business. And so the risk is high in that. That is how it is. Okay. So these are some of the factors that influence startup valuation. First is the management team. Management team is in a startup, when management team is one of the most important factors, because it is the team that is driving the business. At a startup stage, the business is at a very nascent stage, and there is very little historical performance or execution validity that is there. So whenever an investor comes in, they really bet on the team that is running the startup. It is like, because a great team can make an ordinary idea successful, but ordinary team might not be able to make a great idea success. So team is very important. Then after that, if there is historical performance, that will be analyzed, future projections, validity of various assumptions in the projections. What is the product or solution that you are offering? What is its USP and how it is differentiated from other products available in the market? Whether there is a delta 4 advantage to the product from the existing solutions. So basically, there is a concept called delta 4 that if your product, if you give a rating to the existing solution and to your product, if that the difference in that rating is more than 4 points, that is called the delta 4 advantage. So that is there. Then how is the industry scenario going on for, like, currently if we say AI is in demand or electric vehicle is in demand, then those factors affect the valuation as well, if the industry is in demand or not. And then the country scenario. So a great idea in not so great country might not be in demand. So country scenario is also very important. Amount of money required, stage of the company, whether you are at seed stage, series A stage, or any A, B, C stage, mature stage, that is there. And then the market opportunity. So basically, market opportunity is like, how big is the market? Now, even if your idea is great and you have a great product, but that overall market itself is not very big, then even if you are successful and do tremendously well, then also your overall size of the company will not be big, because the market itself is not big. That affects the valuation for the startup. But if the market is huge, then there is scope for growth for your company. You can only grow as much as the market. And okay, let's understand some of the common terminologies that are used. First is the equity valuation and the firm valuation. So equity valuation is basically the value of the equity shares of the company. It is also known as the market cap or market capitalization, and it is basically the price multiplied by the total shares outstanding. Now, in terms of DCF, while we will discuss it more when we discuss the discounted cash flow technique, but just to understand, there are cash flows to equity and cash flows to firm. So when we are discounting cash flows to equity, then we will get the equity value. And when we discount the cash flows to firm, we will get the enterprise value or the firm value. So the firm value is the entire enterprise value. In that, you include the equity value, you include the value of preference shares, minority shares, minority interest, and the net debt. Net debt is net of cash and cash equivalents. So the entire company value, entire share capital value, whatever capital that has been infused in the company, and that is then derived from the cash flow to firm. Then there is pre-money value and the post-money value. Okay, so pre-money value is the value or valuation of your company before raising the funds. So, and post-money value is after raising the funds. That is in very simple terms. So basically, when you are raising the funds, say you are raising the funds 5 crore at a pre-money value of 20 crores. That is, before raising the fund, the value of your company is 20 crores. Now, when that fund comes in, the total value becomes 25 crores. 20 plus 5, 25 crores. Now, the important thing to note over here is your dilution always happens at post-money value. And pre-money, while you will discuss the pre-money value with your investor, but your dilution always happens at the post-money value. So in the current example, your dilution will be 5 by 25, that is 20%, and not 5 by 20, that is 25%. Hope that is clear. Okay, now we have a trivia question for the participants. So which of the following values will you get when raising the funds for your company? So maybe you can write your answers in the chat boxes. Anyone? Okay, there is one answer, C. Anyone else? Come on, there's only one answer so far. I thought the chat box should have been full by now. Okay, one person says A. That is liquidation value. Two are saying equity value. Any more answers? Come on. Let's just wait for a few more seconds. Come on, this should be very straightforward for most of you. You can write it in the chat. No more answers? Okay. let's continue. C is the correct answer, equity value. So when you are raising the funds, you will get the value equivalent to the equity shares that you are issuing. Okay, now we come to the valuation methodologies and approach. So when we are discussing, we have to determine the value of any company. So there are valuation standards, international valuation standards, which have determined three main approaches. These are widely accepted across the world as valuation approaches. First is the asset approach or cost-based approach. Whatever assets you have, you value those assets, and that is the value of your company. Income approach says whatever income that you can generate from your business, you discount it to the current value, and that is the value of your business. Market approach says that, okay, let's see what a similar business like you can fetch in the market and apply that metrics to your company, and then see what can be the value for your business. Again, valuation is not an exact science to get a precise number, dot value numbers, but you can get a range of value using multiple methods. So it's not necessary that if we get 100 crores as one answer from a particular method, then that 100 crores is the precise value of a company. It is always in a range, say 95 to 105. Obviously, that range should not be very wide, but that a reasonable range, up to 10% variation, is an acceptable standard. Okay, asset approach. So in asset approach, it is mainly, as we discussed, it's the assets and liabilities on the books balance sheet, and you value those assets and liabilities, and you get the value of your company. Now, there are 3-4 methods how to value those assets and liabilities. Now, in the book value method, you will just take it at the book value or the historical cost, those assets and liabilities. So, total assets on the balance sheet minus total liabilities on the balance sheet is what is your book value of the company. In the net asset value, you would adjust the assets and liabilities to their fair values. So if you have land and building, plant machinery, you will get a fair value for each of those assets, total them up and reduce the liabilities at current value, and that is the value of your business. In liquidation value, it is mainly in a liquidation scenario. So when the company is shutting down and winding up its business, then what is the cash flows that can be received from selling off those assets and liabilities? Taking that into consideration, the liquidation value is calculated. And then there is replacement value. Replacement value is like what is the current if you replace the existing assets in the same condition. Say, for example, you have used a plant and machinery for 5 years, and so current one is under the net asset value. You will use the fair value, which may be at what price you can sell that thing in the market. But in the replacement value, it will be like if you have to replace that machinery with a new machinery, but in the same condition. So you will take today's current value and apply 5 years depreciation to that value. That will be the replacement value for the business, for the asset. And then you calculate the total value of all the assets and liabilities, and again arrive at the business value. So basically, asset value is asset approach is more relevant where there are assets in the business or meaningful assets. So it's if it's an asset heavy business where there is a factory setup and all heavy capex capital expenditure is required, then this approach is more relevant. But in the startup scenario, as most of them are asset light businesses, this is hardly used. Next is the income approach. So in income approach, we have covered mainly two methods. First is the discounted cash flow method, and second is the first Chicago method. So let's see the discounted cash flow method. So in discounted cash flow method, you have two components: future cash flows, free cash flows, and the discount rate. So you have to first estimate what will be the free cash flows that will be generated from the business over the next 4 or 5 years, and then discount it with an expected return based on the risk scenario for the business to arrive at the free cash flows. So let's just see with an example over here. So for calculating the free cash flows, you will start with EBIT, that is earnings before interest and tax, and reduce tax from that. And then you arrive at net operating profit after tax, and then add depreciation in that, reduce your capital expenditure in that, and changes in working capital. So increase in working capital is reduced and decrease in working capital is added to this. Then you arrive at the free cash flow to firm. So if you remember, while discussing equity value and firm value, we discussed two types of cash flows: free cash flow to firm and free cash flow to equity. So in this example, we have used free cash flow to firm. Now from this, if we reduce the payments for interest and principal payments for debt, then we get the free cash flow to equity. That is the difference between the two. Okay, and when we are using free cash flow to firm, then the discount rate that we use is the weighted average cost of capital. So weighted average cost of capital is basically the a mixture of cost of equity and cost of debt with respect to the respective weights of the equity and debt in the capital structure. So for example, if 60% equity is there and 40% debt is there in the capital structure, so cost of equity into 60% plus cost of debt into 40% is the weighted average cost of capital. So then you add up all the free cash flows, projected cash flows. So in this case, what we have done is we have done a projection for 5 years, first 5 years. Then the next 5 years, we have done a projection at the reducing rate. And then we have considered a terminal growth rate and terminal value projection. So in this case, so the present value of total cash flows is the total of the first 10 years, And then there is this present value of the terminal value, which is calculated that assuming that after the projected period, your company will continue to grow at say 5% or so, which is roughly usually lower than the GDP growth rate of the economy in which you are operating. Then you total both these cash flows to arrive at the enterprise value. And so when we are using free cash flow to firm, you will arrive at the enterprise value. And from that, you have to reduce your debt and add back cash and cash equivalents to arrive at the equity value. Of course, in this case, there won't be any minority interest in the company. So that's why we have not considered that. But if that is there, then we also adjust for those things. Then from the equity value, you divide it by the number of shares that are outstanding and arrive at the value per share for the business. Okay, let's move to the next approach, which is the first Chicago method. Now, in first Chicago method, it is a variant of the discounted cash flow method only, where you, while in discounted cash flow, you only have one set of projections, whereas in the first Chicago method, you will have three sets of projections, base case, moderate case, and worst case scenarios, and arrive at the value in each of the cases. And then you would assign a probability for each scenario. What is the probability of occurrence of each of the scenarios? That is considered as the weights, and take a weighted average of that thing. So like in this case, you get three different values from three different scenarios. Base case, moderate case, worst case, assign a probability 50%, 40%, and 10%, and you arrive at the final value. So as you can see, while if we would have only used one of the case, say moderate case, we would have arrived at a value of say 82 crores. But after applying the scenarios, we arrived at the value of 93 crores, considering all the three scenarios. And then again, you would reduce it by the number of shares, divided by the number of shares to arrive at the value per share. Okay. One more trivia. We have already discussed this in our presentation. So what discount rate will you use when calculating enterprise value using the free cash flow to firm? It is like just checking your knowledge, whatever so far. Answers, please. C. Okay. More answers, please. जल्दी कीजिए, जल्दी जल्दी. Only one person. सिर्फ एक को आंसर पता है, बाकियों को नहीं पता. कोई और आंसर दे रहा है? जवाब किसी को पता है? चलिए ठीक है, आई एम एज्यूमिंग कि सिर्फ एक को पता है अभी। ठीक है, सो अगेन द करेक्ट आंसर इज सी, weighted average cost of capital. Now we come to the market approach, where we value the company using comparable companies, similar companies in the market, in your domain. So this is also known as the comparable company valuation method or the relative valuation method. Under this method, value of the shares of a company is arrived by using multiples derived from valuation of comparable companies. So this is based on the principle that market valuations taking place between informed buyers and sellers incorporate all factors relevant to the valuation, and relevant multiples need to be chosen carefully and adjusted for differences between circumstances. So, for example, if you are using a particular scenario, say you are using multiples for a listed company comparables, and your company is not obviously not listed, so then for a listed company multiple, they have that marketability advantage that when people are buying on the stock exchange, they can easily sell it also back. So that marketability discount should be applied to that multiple, because in your case that marketability will not be there. But at the same time, in your case, there might be a certain amount of control that might be available to the investor. Whereas when a person is investing in the market, stock market, then they don't really have a control over the business. So that the premium for the control can be added. And then there are other adjustments like size discounts and other things based on your financials and all that can be applied. Okay. In this, the first approach is the first method basically is the transaction-based multiples. Now, there are various ways to calculate multiples. The first we are discussing is the transaction-based multiples. Now, when we are talking about transaction-based, or this is also known as the precedent transactions multiple. So in this case, what we are doing is we are comparing companies which have entered into mergers and acquisition transaction in the recent past, or have entered into a private fundraising deal. Like similar companies, similar startups that have raised funds recently. These multiples reflect the value that buyers are willing to pay for a target company. तो जो target company के लिए जो buyers are willing to pay that price, including their synergies, premiums, discounts, and that may arise from the deal. So that is all is included in this. Some examples of transaction-based multiples are EV to revenue. EV in this case is enterprise value. So enterprise value to revenue, enterprise value to EBITDA, and EV to free cash flows. Advantages for using these transaction-based multiples are they capture the actual market conditions and expectations at the time of the deal. They also reflect the strategic value of the target company to the buyer. So when we are using the transaction-based multiple, there might be some synergistic value or that might have been assigned to the particular company by the particular investor. but it may not be applicable in your particular case. So, के regarding there will be some adjustment, some discount will have to be applied to arrive at the value in your case. Then there is the trading multiple. So trading multiple is basically when you are calculating the multiple using stock market prices of listed companies, publicly traded companies, and then so based on these stock market prices, you calculate again the multiples are the same, but that is the way that you are calculating it. So these multiples reflect that investors are willing to pay for a share of the company's equity based on current and expected performance. So multiples are the same. Some additional multiples like price to earning, price to book, and price to sales are also there. Then EV to revenue, EV to EBITDA, and cash flows. So major advantage in using this is it is readily available and updated, and as they are based on the market data. Second is it reflects the consensus view of market participants. So it is not a view of one particular buyer's investor, but it is a consensus view of the participants, which may be more objective and realistic in this case than the individual buyers or sellers. Okay. So next method in this market approach is venture capital method. So in this venture capital method, this assumes that this is mainly from an investor's perspective, that what return an investor assumes from an investment, and what is the exit value or terminal value that they can expect from the investment. बेसिकली जब आप कोई इन्वेस्टर इन्वेस्ट करेगा तो किस वैल्यू पे वो उसको सेल कर पाएगा एट द एंड ऑफ द इन्वेस्टमेंट, से 5 years 10 years जब भी वो सेल करेगा तो कितने वैल्यू पे वो सेल करेगा और कितना रिटर्न एक्सपेक्ट करेगा. तो इन दैट केस it takes into account the return on investment by the investor. ठीक है, same thing है. So generally इसमें जो at startup seed or pre-series the investment that is the return that is expected is in the range of 20 to 30 times. It's not percentage, it's times. So 20 guna return they can expect from a potential investment from this company. Let's again take an example for this thing. So a venture capitalist is may say they expect that after 6 years the business will be equivalent to $900 million. And their expected return from the investment is 30x. So what they will do is that 900 million divided by 30 is 30 million. So 30 million they will assign as the post money value for this business. Then they say if they are suppose investing 5 million right now, then the pre-money value becomes 25 million. Now, assuming there will be some further dilution also during the next 6 years, and their share will further reduce as the company raises more funds. So, assuming there will be 30% dilution in this case, so that 25 million will further be reduced by 30%. 17.5 million is what they will assign as the pre-money value for this business. And so again, if 5 million is what they are raising, the post-money value becomes 22.5 and the dilution happens at 5 by 22.5. This thing is clear. Okay. Now we come to the scorecard evaluation method. So scorecard evaluation method basically assumes that the investor will rate a startup on 7 to 8 critical factors, and they already have an average pre-money value for business at the different stages of the startup. So at pre-money stage, what the average pre-money value will be for the average various companies that have raised funds, and what are the various 7, 8 factors that all of them were evaluated, and whether this company is better or worse with respect to each factor. And then the weighted average for each for all the factors is calculated to arrive at the final value. We will also take an example for this thing. So the first step in this case is to arrive at the pre-money value for the startups in the region. While taking the average, care should be taken to remove the outliers so that average is not too skewed. Again, there may be some exceptions which may have raised value at raised funds at a very high or low value. So obviously you should remove those exceptional cases to avoid any distortion in data and skewness in data. So that can also be verified by the median and mode of the data. The data selected should be of recent period, usually up to 6 months, 1 year, like that. Okay, let's take an example for this one as well. So suppose we have arrived at an average value of 1.25 million for the pre-revenue, pre-money value, pre-revenue startups at the money value. And these are the 7 factors on which we want to evaluate the startup. And we assign a weight for each of the factor, how important that factor is to my overall decision making. So strength of the management is very important. Size of the opportunity is again very important. Product and technology is important. Then some of the lesser important factor, competitive environment maybe, or marketing and sales channels, partnerships that the business has developed, need for additional funding, and what is the overall view of the investor on this investment. So we assign a rating with respect to each of the factors, say 1.3. 1.3 means that with respect to average rating, it is 30% more better than the other startups. So like that it is, and less than 1 is, it is lower than the average startups in that factor. So the weighted average rating for this thing comes to 1.15. So the third step will be to multiply this average weighted average rating with the average value for the startups. So 1.15 into 1.25 is 1.4 million. That is the value for our company. So this is mainly used where it is a pre-revenue or very early stage company where any revenue multiple or the relevant. And so in those cases, this is the method that is used to evaluate startups. Okay, one more trivia question. Which of the following methods will be used while comparing your company to similar companies on the stock market to calculate a company's value? So अगर आपकी स्टॉक मार्केट पे कंपेरेबल कंपनीज, स्टॉक मार्केट पे लिस्टेड कंपनीज से आप कंपेयर कर रहे हो, तो कौन सा इसमें से मेथड आप यूज कर रहे हो तो अपने वैल्यूएशन के लिए? Answers, please. किसी को नहीं पता अभी तक? Very strange. स्टॉक मार्केट पे जब हम स्टॉक मार्केट लिस्टेड कंपनीज के लिए करते हैं तो कौन सा मल्टीपल कैलकुलेट करते हैं? ट्रेडिंग मल्टीपल, ट्रांजैक्शन मल्टीपल, स्कोर कार्ड वैल्यूएशन और वेंचर कैपिटल? क्वेश्चन इज क्लियर? इसमें तो किसी का आंसर नहीं आ रहा. A, answer. Trading multiple, yes. Everyone is sending to another host. Info webinar, okay. A, right. Venture capital method, one answer. और कोई आंसर? All answers going to info. इसमें default I think info webinar करके आ रहा है. That's why all answers are going. You need to change it to everyone. Then is that all? Any more answers in this? I think you can also change it at your end to everyone in meeting. Okay, so the correct answer is trading multiple. And because when we are taking stock market listed companies and prices from stock market, then we are calculating trading multiples. Transaction multiple is basically for precedent transactions, merger acquisition or private fundraising. And scorecard method is obviously for very early stage companies, so it's not for the stock market listed companies. And again, in venture capital method, it is from the investor's perspective, again, not really from the stock market. Okay, so how do you choose the right method for your startup? Which method to be used? Discounted cash flow, cost method, or relative? So discounted cash flow is mainly used in growth phase companies, new projects that are there. You can reliably estimate the cash flow projections that are available. Business model is unique, and there's a long-term outlook for the business. And cost method is used at a very nascent stage projects, but with high capex. So if you are setting up a factory or plant, then that there will be a lot of cost involved in that. That then it can be used. This method can be used to value the company. Or obviously at a very late stage in the say liquidation scenario when the company is winding up. In those scenarios also you use the cost method to arrive at the cost of each value of each asset. And so cost method over here is basically the asset approach that we discussed. Okay. And the relative method is used more when there are obviously there should be peer group companies available, similar domain, which have either raised funds. You should have precedent transactions for M&A or fundraising, and the outlook is short to medium term outlook and stable business. Okay, one more trivia. Company A is a medical equipment manufacturer. It is currently in clinical trials stage and is not expected to generate any revenues for the next 2 years until the product hits the market. Which is the most appropriate method for valuing such a company? Discounted cash flow method, net asset value method, scorecard valuation method, or the transaction multiple? A or C? Okay. So basically, this is a pre-revenue company. There are no revenues in the business and not expected to be generated in the next 2 years also. But they have a product which they are developing in the clinical trial stage. A. So please change your to everyone and then answer. B, net asset value. Okay. Anyone else? अपना मैसेज का टू चेंज करके फिर आंसर करना. और कोई नहीं? Only three answers so far. One more B. Okay, why do you think it is B, net asset value method? What is the asset in this case which can be valued? It is for short-term investment. Okay. But for net asset value, there should be reasonable assets available to value. Then only you will be able to get to the right value. Because it has only assets. So what assets are there? That is the question, which will be significant enough to give it the right value. So I think it will be A, display. Okay, fine. So now, in this case, see, it's a medical equipment manufacturer, and the product is still in a clinical trial stage. So the revenues are not there right now, and it will be after 2 years. There won't be any machinery equipment right now because they are still testing the product. They are not manufacturing it on a large scale, so they won't have that investment. And until that product is approved, they won't be commercially manufacturing it. So that machinery will only come after they commercially start production. At this stage, they have the innovative product that is there. They would have the market segment which they want to target. So that market opportunity would be there. And there will be obviously the team will be there, which will be there, and then there are other factors. So basically, when an investor is coming in, let's evaluate discounted cash flow method. So discounted cash flow method will give you one set of projections, but in this case, the product may be approved, may not be approved at this stage. So you don't know how, and if it is approved, what will be really the product acceptability or not. Again, there will be questions. So determining the reliably the projections will be very challenging in this case. You might use a first Chicago method where you are using three scenarios in this case, but taking only one set of projections might be very dangerous in this case. Now, net asset value, obviously there won't be any assets. Whatever expenses they are doing at this stage will be all expensed out in the P&L. There won't be any as such asset recognized in the balance sheet until it is in the development phase tested. And so now comes scorecard method and the transaction multiple. Transaction multiple, again, not possible because there are no metrics to value it against. There is no revenue, no EBITDA or any other metrics. So the method is scorecard valuation method, where you will evaluate the company on various factors. That is the most appropriate thing in this case. And so the investor will evaluate it on those 7-8 factors and then try to arrive at the value for this company. Okay, so this is one thing which is not directly related to valuation, but I thought it was very relevant to the startups that are raising funds. So I thought I will just show it quickly in my presentation as well. So angel tax is basically, I think a lot of you would have heard about it and also might be concerned about it when you are going to raise funds. So just to have some overview and clarity for your purpose. So angel tax is when you are raising funds, when any company, unlisted company is raising capital at a premium, and that premium is more than the fair market value of the company. And then the fair market value is obviously calculated based on the factors as determined in the income tax rules. So while we are not going into the details of how fair market value is calculated, I'm just discussing the applicability of the section and how it is relevant for the startup. So first thing is this provision is not applicable. So these are the areas where this provision is not applicable. So if you are a venture capital undertaking and you are raising funds from a venture capital company or a venture capital fund or a category 1 or 2 AIF fund, then this provision is not applicable. You don't have to worry about this thing. Now, if you are a company and raising funds from a class of assets, class of persons, as may be notified by the central government, then again, you don't have to worry about this section. This section is not applicable to you. Or if you are a startup company recognized by DPIIT, you have taken that startup recognition certificate and fulfill certain conditions, then again, this section is not applicable to you and need not worry about it. So let's see what is a venture capital company undertaking a fund. What are these things? So a venture capital undertaking is nothing but just a domestic company which is not listed on any stock exchange in India. So any private unlisted company is a venture capital undertaking as per this definition. Now, what is a venture capital company? So a venture capital company is a company registered under the Companies Act and also regulated by SEBI under the either the venture capital funds regulations or the AIF regulations, and they are registered with SEBI as a venture capital fund or category 1 or 2 AIF. Then it is a venture capital company. But if it is not in the company format, it is in a trust format, then it is called the venture capital fund. So basically, if you are receiving fund from a SEBI registered AIF, then this section is not applicable to you. Then the third is the specified class of persons. So government has notified certain specified class of persons. If you are receiving funds from them, then again, the section is not applicable. So it may be government or government-related investors such as central bank or sovereign wealth funds or international or multilateral organizations agencies, including entities controlled by the government, or where direct or indirect ownership of the government is 75% only. So if you are receiving funds from a sovereign wealth fund or a government organization, then this thing is not applicable. Or you are receiving funds from banks or entities involved in insurance business. Again, this is not applicable. Following entities resident by of any country or specified territory. Entities registered with SEBI under FPI, endowment funds, pension funds, or broad-based pooled investment vehicles. Then in this case, it is not applicable. Then we also saw that if you are a registered startup, so what conditions you need to fulfill? Your paid up share capital plus share premium should be less than 25 crores. But at the same time, in calculation of that 25 crores, if you have received an investment from non-resident or a venture capital company or fund, then that amount is not included in the calculation of 25 crores. And similarly, if you have received investment from a listed entity whose net worth exceeds 100 crore or turnover exceeds 250 crores, then again that amount of investment is not included for calculation of this 25 crores limit. That's it from me. Now, this is just a brief overview of what we do. We are basically a boutique consulting firm providing valuation services, startup services, transaction advisory, and CFO solutions. We serve both startups, mid-size and large-size companies as well. That's it from me. So hope you enjoyed the presentation and was very useful for you all. So we can take questions now.
थैंक यू सो मच इस टॉपिक के बारे में इतने अच्छे से समझाने के लिए। अब सेशन में सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स अनुरोध करना चाहूंगी कि आज के विषय को लेकर अगर आपके मन में कोई सवाल है या आप कोई जानकारी चाहते हैं तो इस सेशन के क्वेश्चन आंसर सेगमेंट में हम तक अपने सवाल पहुंचा सकते हैं। मैं आपके जूम पेज में जो हैंड बटन है उसे क्लिक करके हैंड रेस कीजिए। हम आपको अनम्यूट करके आपके सवाल को इस सेशन में शामिल कर लेंगे। अगर किसी कारण से हम आपका सवाल नहीं ले पाते हैं तो आप चैट बॉक्स के माध्यम से भी हम तक अपना सवाल पहुंचा सकते हैं। आईआईडी की टीम आपसे स्वयं संपर्क करेगी। अब सेशन को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। अब मैं सेशन में सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स से अनुरोध करूंगी कि यदि उनके पास कोई सवाल हो तो वो अपना हैंड रेस करें। मैं सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स से अनुरोध करना चाहूंगी कि यदि उनके पास किसी भी प्रकार का कोई सवाल है तो वो अपना हैंड रेस करके अपना सवाल पूछ सकते हैं। जी, मैं टेक टीम से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि वो जोएब जी का माइक अनम्यूट कर दे ताकि वो अपना सवाल पूछ सकें।
हाय जी, मेरा सवाल ये है दैट इफ देयर इज अ प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टर जो एक इंडिविजुअल है एंड ही इज नॉट इन्वेस्टिंग थ्रू अ कंपनी और थ्रू एनी ऑफ दिस सोर्सेज जो इन्होंने बताया, एक नॉर्मल रेसिडेंट इंडिविजुअल, इफ ही इज इन्वेस्टिंग इनटू द कंपनी, सो क्या उसको इसका टैक्स बेनिफिट मिलता है?
टैक्स बेनिफिट?
हाँ, मतलब एज इन से फॉर एग्जांपल, मैं शायद सवाल सही से पूछ नहीं पा रहा हूँ दैट अगर मान लीजिए वो 50 लाख रुपए मेरी कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट करता है तो क्या ये 50 लाख उसने अपने प्रॉफिट में से निकाल के दिया है उसके आईटीआर में, तो ये 50 लाख के ऊपर में जो उसको नॉर्मल टैक्स लगना होता वो अभी भी लगेगा या नहीं लगेगा?
नहीं, इस पे कोई टैक्स बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा इन्वेस्टर को।
नहीं मिलेगा?
नहीं मिलेगा।
तो अगर मान लीजिए उसने ये साल में 1 करोड़ का प्रॉफिट बनाया हुआ है तो उसको 1 करोड़ के ऊपर टैक्स लगेगा, इररिस्पेक्टिव उसने वो 1 करोड़ में से
राइट
50 लाख मेरी
राइट।
कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट किया है नहीं किया।
ये तो इन्वेस्टमेंट हो गया ना उसका, कोई एक्सपेंस वगैरह नहीं हुआ ना उसके लिए
तो
तो।
ऐसा कोई सिस्टम नहीं है दैट अगर इन्वेस्ट करता है तो बिकॉज
नहीं
वी
नहीं
हैव अ
नहीं
स्टार्टअप इंडिया का सर्टिफिकेट है तो उसके अंदर बेनिफिट मिलता है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है।
नहीं नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि उसको उतने से टैक्स कम हो जाएगा, ऐसा कुछ नहीं
ओके सर, आई थिंक दैट वाज माय क्वेश्चन।
है।
थैंक यू सो मच जोएब जी। मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि आपको अपने सवालों का जवाब मिल गया होगा। अब मैं दोबारा पूछना चाहूंगी, यदि किसी पार्टिसिपेंट के पास किसी भी प्रकार का कोई सवाल है जो वो प्रतीक सर से पूछना चाहते हैं, तो वो अपना हैंड रेस करके पूछ सकते हैं, या वो चाहे तो चैट के माध्यम से भी हम तक अपना सवाल पहुंचा सकते हैं।
एक चैट बॉक्स में आई थिंक एक क्वेश्चन दिख रहा है,
जी सर।
व्हाट टाइप ऑफ वैल्यूएशन शुड वी यूज company. So for
जी
a pre-revenue stage company, we discussed we can use scorecard method. That is one of a popular method. Then we can also use first Chicago method, or we can use venture capital method, where we can see where we can get to in next 5 years and then arrive at the value.
सो मच। सर जोएब जी का एक और सवाल है। जोएब जी, आपका माइक अनम्यूट कर दिया गया है, आप अपना
यस
सवाल
यस
पूछ
यस
सकते हैं।
यस सर। सर वन क्वेश्चन इज दैट, मान लीजिए अगर मैंने फंड रेज किया है इन द मंथ ऑफ अप्रैल, माय फर्स्ट राउंड आई हैव रेज्ड इन द मंथ ऑफ अप्रैल, एंड ये वैल्यू हमने की है शायद कंपनी की 5 करोड़ के ऊपर में। इस बेस के ऊपर में मैंने मान लीजिए अगर 50 लाख रुपए रेज किया है, सो माय नेक्स्ट राउंड ऑफ फंडिंग, क्या ऐसा कोई टाइम लिमिट है कि मैं 6 महीना या 3 महीना या 1 साल के अंदर ही मैं वैल्यू नहीं बढ़ाकर फंड रेज नहीं कर सकता हूँ, ऐसा कुछ सिस्टम है, या एम आई फ्री टू डू वट एवर आई वांट?
नहीं, उसमें कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है।
तो आज मैंने अगर 5 करोड़ की वैल्यूएशन पे 50 लाख रुपए रेज किया है,
राइट
तो विद इन 3 मंथ्स मैं शायद 15 करोड़ की वैल्यूएशन पर भी रेज कर सकता हूँ इफ आई गेट एन इन्वेस्टर।
राइट, यू कैन
हाँ
see
ऐसा।
valuation is always as on a particular date and the conditions prevailing on that date. So after
राइट
3 months there might be
यस
different conditions that may be prevail. हो सकता है आपका प्रोडक्ट अप्रूव हो गया हो, या हो सकता है
राइट
आपका
राइट।
कोई बड़ा ऑर्डर मिल गया हो इस बीच में, तो वैल्यू कैन चेंज फ्रॉम what within 3 months as well. Within a day also it can change. So
अच्छा, विद इन अ डे आल्सो, सो देयर इज नो
um,
टाइम बाउंड इन
yes, there is no time bound.
दैट। सर मुझे एक और सवाल था, दैट इन्वेस्टर को एग्जिट कैसे दिया जाता है? व्हाट इज एन आइडियल वे कि एग्जिट कैसे हो एक इन्वेस्टर का?
इन्वेस्टर को एग्जिट देने के लिए there are basically investor should be able to sell its shares. So either कोई और बड़ा इन्वेस्टर आ जाए जो उसको परचेज कर ले, या फिर बिजनेस इतना अच्छा चल रहा है कि आप एज अ मैनेजमेंट ही बाय बैक कर लो शेयर्स, या फिर यू कैन गो फॉर एन आईपीओ जहाँ पे इन्वेस्टर सेल आउट कर सके, या फिर
ओके,
मर्जर एक्विजिशन में आप कंपनी सेल आउट कर दो अगेन, तो एग्जिट मिल सकता है।
ऐसा कोई नहीं है ना कि एट द टाइम व्हेन वी आर मेकिंग द डील, जहां
हम्म,
पर मैं इन्वेस्टमेंट ले रहा हूँ वहां पर एक कंडीशन नहीं होती है, या नहीं रख सकता हूँ मैं, या रख सकता हूँ मैं?
क्या कंडीशन?
दैट मान लीजिए आप मेरे इन्वेस्टर है, तो मैं आपको एक कंडीशन कि आप 50 लाख रुपया डाल रहे हैं, तो शायद 3 साल या 5 साल के अंदर में मैं आपको 3x 5x करा के दे दूं, देन यू मस्ट एग्जिट ओनली, ऐसा कुछ हो सकता है?
नहीं नहीं, मस्ट एग्जिट वाली तो कोई बात नहीं कर सकते।
नहीं होती उसमें, ठीक है,
नहीं
इट हैज टू बी
नहीं,
विद।
मस्ट एग्जिट तो आप जो इन्वेस्टमेंट है जो डलती है वो जनरली डलती है या तो इक्विटी शेयर्स में, या फिर कन्वर्टेबल प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स के थ्रू।
हम्म हम्म।
तो उनकी कोई मैच्योरिटी पीरियड एज सच नहीं होती है, तो मैच्योरिटी
ओके,
नहीं होती तो मस्ट एग्जिट वाला क्लॉज एज सच रेलेवेंट नहीं है।
ऑलराइट
यू
सर।
कैन हैव एन अंडरस्टैंडिंग विद योर इन्वेस्टर कि भाई ठीक है 5 years में अगर मेरा बिजनेस ऐसा हो गया तो आई विल बाय यू बैक और समथिंग, बट It is not enforceable at either end.
Got it, sir. Done. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच सर। मैं सभी पार्टिसिपेंट से पूछना चाहूंगी, यदि उनके पास कोई सवाल हो तो वो अपना हैंड रेस करके अपना सवाल पूछ सकते हैं। इसी के साथ हम आ चुके हैं अपने सेशन की समाप्ति की ओर। थैंक यू सो मच प्रतीक जी, आज के टॉपिक के बारे में हमारे
एक और
दर्शकों को
क्वेश्चन आई थिंक आ
समझाने।
रहा है इसमें चैट
जी।
बॉक्स में। My question is, what is the funding to startup for startups?
What is the funding for startups?
क्या क्वेश्चन है ये? डिग्री फंडिंग, व्हाट इज द डिग्री फंडिंग? इनको अनम्यूट करके इनका क्वेश्चन ले सकते हैं।
सर आप उनका नाम बताइए।
इनका नाम आ रहा है सौरभ साहू।
जी
सौरभ साहू है क्या?
सौरभ जी, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि आप अपना माइक अनम्यूट। सौरभ जी, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि आप अपना हैंड रेस करें। जी
Hello.
हेलो।
जी सर।
So my question is, if I'm raising funds and investor is asking at a very early stage, what will be the exit strategy for him? So what should we give them the answers? It is a very early stage startup. We are raising pre-seed funding. So what should we give them the answers? Because they want to know once the startup is growing, what can be their options for like the exit strategy.
So you are asking about the exit strategy for the investor, right?
हाँ।
तो एग्जिट स्ट्रेटेजी तो इन्वेस्टर के लिए वही हो सकती है जो अभी मैंने पहले क्वेश्चन में भी आंसर किया था कि भाई अगर कोई और व्हाट इज योर एक्सपेक्टेशन कि भाई आप कहाँ पे पहुंचोगे, एंड व्हाट डू यू थिंक, आइदर डू यू वांट रियली वांट टू सेल ऑफ योर बिजनेस इन 5 years, मेक इट बिग इनफ फॉर लार्ज कंपनी टू एक्वायर यू, या फिर आप बाय बैक करने का प्लान करते हो, या सेकेंड राउंड में या नेक्स्ट फ्यूचर राउंड्स में कोई बड़ा इन्वेस्टर आके बाय परचेज कर लेगा इन्वेस्टर को, या फिर आईपीओ का। तो व्हाट इज योर प्लान कि भाई आप अपने कंपनी को 5 years में कहाँ देखते हो, वेदर यू वांट टू गो फॉर आईपीओ। तो आप जब अपने इन्वेस्टर को बताओगे कि आप आईपीओ करना चाहते हो, या किसी बड़ी कंपनी को सेल आउट करना चाहते हो, या बायबैक करना चाहते हो, आप क्या करना चाहते हो, दैट इज योर एग्जिट स्ट्रेटेजी। Hope that answers.
मैं सभी दर्शकों से पूछना चाहूंगी कि उनके पास यदि कोई और सवाल है या प्रतीक जी के चैट बॉक्स में कोई और सवाल है तो वो अपना सवाल पूछ सकते हैं। इसी के साथ हम आ चुके हैं अपने सेशन की समाप्ति की ओर। थैंक यू सो मच प्रतीक जी, आज के टॉपिक के बारे में हमारे दर्शकों को समझाने के लिए, उनके सभी प्रश्नों के उत्तर देने के लिए और उनके डाउट्स क्लियर करने के लिए। हम उम्मीद करते हैं कि इस सेशन में हमारे सभी दर्शकों को काफी महत्वपूर्ण जानकारियां प्राप्त हुई होंगी और ये सेशन उनके लिए काफी फायदेमंद साबित हुआ होगा। आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद इस सेशन से जुड़ने के लिए। तो इसी के साथ आज के इस वेबिनार को यहीं समाप्त करते हैं। फिर मिलेंगे एक और नए वेबिनार में एक और नए इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक के साथ। तब तक के लिए नमस्कार, धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू एवरीवन।
आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारत की संतान है हम, जगत गुरु का नाम है हम, आर्यभट्ट और सुश्रुत जैसे ऋषियों का अभिमान है हम, तक्षशिला और नालंदा सा गौरव जिसका, ऐसे भारत की यारों पहचान है हम। विश्व पटल पर फहरेगा तिरंगा प्यारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेक इन इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया का हो सपना पूरा, डिजिटल और स्टार्टअप इंडिया अब ना रहे अधूरा। मुद्रा एमी सेमी उद्यमी अपने सूर्य शिखर हैं, हिंदुस्तानी व्यापारी होगा अब जग का सूरा। बिजनेस के आकाश में चमचमकेगा भारत तारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। मेहनत कस खेती कर किसान भरता है अन्न भंडारे, लाल देश का फौजी बन तन खड़ा है सरहद द्वारे। रोटी देता एक लाल है लाज बचैया दूजा, नमन हिंद की सेना करते भारतवंशी सारे। एक अखंड भारत का तुम ही सत्य सहारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। भारतवंशी आन से बान से ध्यान से, धर्म आत्मनिर्भरता का निभाएंगे जी जान से। त्याग विदेशी अपनाएंगे पूर्ण स्वदेशी, गांव से ग्लोब स्वदेशी हो सर्व सम्मान से। एक राष्ट्र हो श्रेष्ठ राष्ट्र गूंजे चहुनारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा। आत्मनिर्भर भारत होगा हमारा, वंदे मातरम का गूंजे जय जयकारा।
इसका मार्ग एक ही है, आत्मनिर्भर भारत।